The Spacey Adventures of Bionic Booty Shorts. Yeah.
Satellite uplink established.
Hey everybody, welcome to this bitty powered episode of Super Sci-Fi Party, the only podcast where we talk exclusively about fun science fiction, movies, TV shows, and more. No post-apocalyptic downer sci-fi allowed. My name is Todd Kinsley, and with me as always is my tiki swearing, Dr. Theopolis bearing, skin tight uniform wearing co-host and brother, Scott Kinsley. How are you doing on this 25th century winter's day, Scott?
Doing well, thanks. I just wanted to say nanu nanu.
Shazbut. Today we're going to be talking about a TV series called Buck Rogers in the 25th century, specifically the episode Awakening Part 1 and 2 from 1979. Do you remember 1979, Scott?
Vaguely.
See, since I wasn't born, and for 20 years after that, I don't actually remember it at all. But
Those time travel paradoxes are rough.
There's something. Anyway, in honor of the fantastic sci-fi series Buck Rogers in the 25th century, we have created our top 10 list of rejected sci-fi show titles from 1979.
Number 10, The Boogie Down Biosphere.
Boogie, oogie, oogie. Something like that. Number 9, Mr. Space Face.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck that means.
Number 8, The Love Rocket.
Ew.
Yeah, I don't know if that could be aired on TV.
Oh, Love Rocket. Number 7, Deep Space Disco Detectives.
Sadly, I'd watch that. Number 6, Pinball Planet.
Okay, no, I'd watch that.
Well, I'd want to go there.
Somebody needs to make something called Pinball Planet. Number 5, Black Hole Bell Bottoms. That sounds scarier than bell bottoms.
Only just slightly.
Takes it up one whole level of frightening.
Number 4, The Federation of Funky Force Fields.
They all have the same theme song in my head. Number 3, Groovy Gravity Guys. Strike Again.
Strike Again.
Sounds like a sequel.
Number 2, The Disco Ball Death Ray Incident.
Now that sounds like some kind of play that you would see.
You know, had I read it beforehand, it would have been The Disco Ball Death Ray Incident.
Exactly. And number 1 on our top 10 list of rejected sci-fi show titles from 1979, The Spacey Adventures of Bionic Booty Shorts. Yeah.
All right, that sounds like another good show, though.
I would definitely watch pretty much all of those. Today, however, we're going to talk about an actual sci-fi TV series called Buck Rogers in the 25th century, specifically the episodes Awakening Part 1 and 2, which kicked off the series in 1979. Now, there's a little bit of a story to how Buck Rogers got started.
Ooh, story time.
Which we will get to in just a minute.
Oh.
But first, I want to tell you about the episode Awakening, Part 1 and 2. It was written by Glenn A. Larson and Leslie Stevens and was directed by Daniel Haller. I have to say, out of those 3 people, the only one that I've ever heard of before was Glenn A. Larson.
What'd you hear of him from?
Glenn A. Larson was a showrunner, show writer, show creator who created multiple TV shows in the 70s and 80s that were hits, including Magnum P.I., 1980 to 1988, The Fall Guy, 1981 to 1986, and Knight Rider, 1982 to 1986. But these days, he's most often remembered for creating Battlestar Galactica, which ran between 1978 and 1979. Unfortunately for Battlestar fans, that show was way too expensive, so it got canceled. And his 1979 follow-up was Buck Rogers in the 25th century.
Wow. So he pretty much made everything we liked back then.
He at least made half of it.
At least of the hour-long action drama sci-fi things.
Pretty much. He was the man.
Sweet.
The fact that he made Battlestar and Buck Rogers just blows my mind. Plus Knight Rider. Come on.
Well, Magnum P.I.
And Magnum. Speaking of which, if you are not watching the new Magnum P.I., you need to get on it. It's I know it's not sci-fi, at least not yet. There haven't been any sci-fi episodes, but it's great. It really is great. It's very good. I was concerned. I was an old school PI, Magnum PI fan. When I saw they were coming out with a new one, I was a bit hesitant, but it definitely won me over. It's worth checking it out. And there's sometimes cameos by the original actors, with the exception, of course, of Tom Selleck, who is still ticked off that he didn't get to play Magnum again.
Well, doesn't he have a show immediately after Magnum P.I. on that network?
I believe Blue Bloods might still be running, but I remember reading an article when they were coming out with the new Magnum P.I. that he was upset that he wasn't cast as Magnum.
Really?
They wanted it to be the older adventures of Magnum or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that would have been as good.
I like the new Magnum. I missed Tom Selleck at first, but the new guy, whose name eludes me, grew on me. And if you haven't checked it out, I highly suggest that you go give it a try. It's fun. It's exciting. It's a little bit unpredictable even. Most shows, I can figure out the plot in the first 5 to 6 minutes and know exactly how the show is going to end.
Yeah.
But Magnum keeps you guessing here and there, so it's really cool. Anyway, back in sci-fi world, Buck Rogers in the 25th century had an interesting cast, to say the least. This specific episode, Awakening, there was a Buck Rogers TV movie that was actually released theatrically and did really well. So then they took the movie, cut it into 2 parts, which is Awakening, part 1 and 2, added some new scenes, and then that became the pilot for the Buck Rogers series.
Yeah, it's very weird because it reads very much like a pilot for a TV show, but then to hear that it was in the theaters, you're like, ooh, it's interesting.
Star Wars came out, and everybody was desperate to jump on the Star Wars train. So the Star Wars bandwagon, as they say. If you had anything sci-fi, they were going to drag it out because there was money to be made, and suddenly everybody was crazy for sci-fi.
It was a wonderful time.
The character of Buck Rogers actually dates back to 1928.
Ooh.
He's the creation of author Philip Francis Nolan, and he first appeared in the novella Armageddon 2419 AD. In each iteration, William, or sometimes Anthony Rogers, is a modern-day Earthman who, through accidental suspended animation, ends up 500 years in the future. The concept proved a particularly fruitful one, and many imitators sprang up afterwards. The most famous of these is Flash Gordon, who debuted in 1934. I think we need to take a pact now for a Super Sci-Fi Party podcast.
Oh.
Anytime that we say Flash Gordon, we immediately follow it with The people who don't know what we're talking about, check out the 1980s theatrical version of Flash Gordon with the amazing soundtrack by the rock band Queen, and your eyes will be opened. In my opinion, the greatest sci-fi rock soundtrack of all time.
Fair enough.
And the greatest sci-fi soundtrack of all time, coming in second only to, I believe, Star Wars: A New Hope. So that's all opinion, of course.
Radically different styles there, but I see the point. Yeah, I can agree with that.
So Buck Rogers as a concept has been around for a long time. One of the original sci-fi OGs, and apparently he got a series in 1979 on television. Playing Captain William Buck Rogers in 1979 was Gil Gerard. Playing Colonel Wilma Deering was Erin Gray. And wow, we need to talk about Erin Gray. One, it goes without saying that she was one of the original sci-fi megababes.
Yes.
And even much later in life, she still was and is a sci-fi megababe. She also, later in life, a lot of people don't know this, but she started an agency that books talent into fan conventions. because she would go to a lot of these Comic Cons and sci-fi fan conventions and whatnot. And she would book herself, the convention pays for you to come, or they just let you sell your merchandise, or they pay you and sell your merchandise, but they provide flights and hotels, and there's details that need to be worked out. And she kept doing it for herself. And then a friend asked her, someone in the sci-fi world asked her to do it for him or her. I can't remember exactly what actor it was. And she did, and then on and on. And next thing you know, she has a full-blown business being a booking agent for fan conventions.
Ooh, so she's going to be calling us up, trying to book us at conventions soon?
Absolutely.
Sweet.
Assuming that, she becomes one of our 300 listeners.
Oh, I'm sure she is.
Of course, because she's not sci-fied out by now.
No.
She's only been doing it since 1979. Although, the last thing that I remember seeing her star in was amazing. She was in later seasons of The Guild. If you're not familiar with The Guild, it was what I call it, an early web series that became extremely popular. And it followed the story of several players of an online RPG similar to Warcraft. And it was comedy. It was great. And she came on actually playing a pseudo version of herself with a different name. I can't remember the name of the character right now, but she was a former sci-fi princess, and one of the people in the guild became highly enamored with her, and I think she became his girlfriend for a while.
Nice.
It was fantastic. So there's not enough nice things to say about Colonel Wilma Deering, except that she needs to get a different rank because Colonel doesn't make sense. This is how you spell the word Colonel. 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 Kernal. Come on, English.
Colonel.
Come on, English. Get it together. In Buck Rogers in the 25th century, there was a fun little robot who was pretty much everyone's favorite character from the show. And his body was played by Felix, I believe it's Silla. And the voice of Twiki the robot was played by Mel Blank. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's because he was the man of 1,000 voices. And get ready for this, Scott, because I'm going to drop some knowledge on you that's going to blow your mind.
I'm not ready yet. Okay.
Doom, doom, doom. Oh, copyrighted music. So
I'm
I'll
ready
do
now.
new notes that don't make sense. Okay. Mel Blank played the voice of, on Looney Tunes, he played the voice of Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Elmer Fudd, Tweety Bird, Yosemite Sam, Porky Pig, Sylvester the Cat, Speedy Gonzales, Tasmanian Devil, and more. Ever hear of any of those?
Yeah, the Ann Moore character was my favorite.
And more. I still have and more posters on my wall.
Actually, out of those, I think Tasmanian Devil was my favorite. But that's the one.
On the Flintstones, he played Barney Rubble, Dino, and more. On Captain K-Man, he played Captain K-Man. Can you do your best Captain K-Man for us?
Captain Caveman.
Not bad, not bad. I feel sad for today's generation because Captain Caveman's kind of become a lost treasure. Like, I don't know that he's really carried on. I don't know that a lot of really young people necessarily know who Captain Caveman was.
Now, interesting you call him a lost treasure because in a job I do elsewhere, I have a lost and found drawer that has a little plastic thing with a Captain Caveman sticker on it. It appeared there maybe 6 years ago.
Well, it's good to know someone's keeping Captain Caveman alive. If you haven't seen Captain Caveman, go check him out. Further, going on in Mel Blank's credits, Heathcliff, he played Heathcliff, Spike, and more.
Man, that Ann Moore gets in a lot of shows.
On the Jetsons, he played Mr. Spacely. On Gilligan's Island, he played Sam the Parrot and Ribbit the Frog.
Nice.
I don't remember talking animals at Gilligan's Island, but
No. Well, I guess a parrot could talk, but
IMDb doesn't lie. In The Munsters, he played the Raven,
nice.
which I also don't remember. I vaguely remember seeing a raven. He might have been near the stairs or something.
I was going to say he hung out on the stairway. And
I think he might have said Nevermore. I'm not sure. And on the Fruit Loops commercials, he played Toucan Sam. So Mel Blanc, the man of 1,000 voices, played the voice of Twiki. And then the body of Twiki the robot was Felix Silla.
Yeah, you see, you spun me off in another direction here. I seem to remember on Looney Tunes, Daffy Duck used to have a little spin-off series there that was Duck Dodgers in the 25th and a half century.
It's funny because I actually originally had that Duck Dodgers reference in the top 10 list, and then I took it out because I didn't know if people today would know what it was.
Well, I'm trying to figure out which one came first, the Buck Rogers TV show or Duck Dodgers on the Looney Tunes.
I'm pretty sure it would be Duck Dodgers. A lot of the Looney Tunes credits, like a big chunk of them, start in 1946.
All right, apparently this was Duck Dodgers came out in 53.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Speaking of robots that were in Buck Rogers in the 25th century, the voice of Dr. Theopolis was Eric Server. And Dr. Theopolis, for those who don't know, kind of looked like a thick wall clock with LED eyes and mouth. Actually, He didn't have a mouth, did he? He had eyes. I guess he had a mouth because it blinked
they
when
kind
he
of
talked.
blinked, yeah.
Because apparently in Buck Rogers, computers had started making themselves and decided to form, I believe it's the Council of Computing.
Yep, the Computer Council, I think they called it.
And they benevolently oversee mankind.
And they program themselves. No humans are involved anymore.
That's right. They create new versions or whatever. And I was like, this kind of sounds like the start of Terminator, but
apparently it went right for them.
Yeah, apparently it's still working at this time, but you can see later it evolving into a Terminator-type situation. Other characters in Buck Rogers in the 25th century are Dr. Elias Hower, played by Tim O'Connor. And we were watching some original Star Trek The Next Generation episodes, and we happened to see him pop up on Star Trek.
Yes.
So he's a traitor to Buck Rogers.
Yep, I think he popped up. I don't remember exactly, but somewhere close to 10 years later on TNG.
Yeah, I can't remember the episode. Princess Ardala was played by Pamela Hensley. Holy cow. Whenever anyone talks about a sex symbol from Buck Rogers, they always talk about Colonel Wilma Deering, but I guess they forget about Princess Ardala because she was a bad guy. Maybe that's why.
Maybe.
Holy cats. Was she rocking a metal bikini long before Princess Leia?
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, all her casual wear was like long dresses and everything. And then anytime there's a formal event, then all of a sudden she's got to pop on a bikini and a cape.
You could definitely say this about Buck Rogers in the 25th century. It has not aged well. There are definitely some Me Too moments and sexism and...
Yep, even from the robots.
Yes, even from the robots.
Or primarily from the robots.
It's, well, I wouldn't say that. I'd say primarily from Buck.
True.
It has not aged well, per se. If you're a super PC person, there are going to be a few things you don't like in there. It's not constant, and it doesn't overpower the series. And they did have things like Wilma Deering was the top person in Earth Defense Force.
Yep.
She was the colonel. But at the same time, she was dressed in a skin-tight suit and said some wacky things to Buck Rogers here and there. But then again, he was in a skin-tight suit as well. Everyone was, so...
Well, that's the only outfit you're allowed to wear in the future.
Yeah, that's how you know I could never be on Buck Rogers, because there's no way in heck I'm putting on that skin-tight suit. Also starring in Buck Rogers was Kane, played by Henry Silva. And here's my favorite character name of the episode that we watched. Duke Butler played TigerMan. He sounds like a He-Man character, doesn't he?
He kind of looked like a He-Man character, too.
He really did. Welcome, TigerMan. And in IMDb, TigerMan is one word.
I mean, that was one impressively large guy. Kind of looked like a wrestler, but when I looked him up, I couldn't find any other listing for him except this episode of Buck Rogers.
Nope, I don't know where they dug him up, but they buried him back there when they were done with him.
Yep, imagine a wrestler or a strong man at a circus.
That's what he looked like, an old-time carny strongman.
Yeah, he probably was.
1928, he's like, I am TigerMan. But, you know, this was supposed to be 500 years in the future, so try to figure that one out. So as we mentioned, Buck Rogers premiered in 1979. What else was happening, Scott, in 1979 that competed with Buck Rogers?
Well, some shows that were directly competing with Buck Rogers. Laverne and Shirley, backed up by Benson. And then in the winter, they replace Laverne and Shirley with Mork and Mindy. On another channel, another sci-fi fiction great, The Waltons. And throughout the week, if you watch through onto a Sunday, you could find Galactica 1980.
Ooh, the horrible, horrible sequel to Battlestar Galactica.
Yep, it was something. It was like when they brought in those cousins on the Dukes of Hazzard and pretended they were just going to replace the other two.
But they had some stiff competition television-wise, though.
Yeah, there were some.
I mean, Laverne and Shirley and Waltons were both very popular.
I think Waltons used to be one of the most popular.
I think it did. Well, today we're looking at Buck Rogers' Awakenings, part 1 and 2. And since it kicks off the series, it starts how you think it would start. William Buck Rogers is on a solo space mission in the year 1987.
Ooh.
Which at the time was 8 years in the future. You know, they didn't really give themselves a lot of room, did they?
No.
They're like, this show, no way this show is going to be popular. So we'll just set it 8 years in the future when it starts and no one will care. But Buck Rogers is on a solo space shuttle mission in 1987. I still think it's weird that someone would send up a space shuttle with one person in it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? What'd they do with all the extra room?
Yeah, that's where the stuff goes.
Anyway, Buck is on a solo space shuttle mission in 1987 when an ice meteor storm, I don't know if that's a real thing, shuts down his life support and leaves him frozen for 504 years.
Ooh.
Wouldn't your life support have to keep going to keep you alive for 500 years, or just everything slows down so much because of being frozen that...
No, there would definitely have to be some minimal life support. You might not be using up quite as much oxygen, but yeah, I don't know.
So I bet the first thing he did after he was discovered was take the world's longest pee. No. Perhaps. We don't know. Not exactly covered. But in the year 2491, Buck is finally found by the alien flagship Draconia, which is headed to Earth on a diplomatic mission. It was a pretty standard discovered the guy from the past kind of story, Rip Van Winkle, whatever. I don't know if there's other examples we could think of, but it's a man out of time, kind of Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
Man out of time stories are not unusual in sci-fi. Back to the Future.
Demolition Man.
There's a lot of them. In this one, it is somewhat unusual because Buck is actually found by the villains.
And we know they're the villains by the music that precedes every scene they're in.
That's right. They are clearly the villains. As we said, the flagship Draconia, which is funny because aren't they called Draconians?
Yes, they are.
So it would be like the flagship human from the Humans. Anyway, the flagship Draconia, which is headed to Earth on a diplomatic mission, or so they say. On board, Buck meets the sexy Princess Ardala, and the Draconians repair Buck's shuttle, which is very nice of them.
Yeah.
But they plant a homing beacon on his ship to help them learn how to get through Earth's defense shield. Well, I guess they weren't so nice after all.
No, apparently not.
Upon arriving near Earth, Buck is greeted, quote unquote, by Earth Starfighters led by Colonel Wilma Deering. And she orders Buck to follow them to New Chicago. And they are incredibly unfriendly. And apparently you don't have to study the history of Earth to be in the Earth Defense Force or to be a colonel, because they seem to have no idea.
Well, to be fair, it is a couple 100 years later.
Yeah, but if I saw a medieval trebuchet rolling down the street, I would know what it was.
True. Might be a little unexpected, but you would at least know what it is.
And the fact that he's speaking English with, he's from Chicago with a Chicago accent, I don't know. It just seems weird that they have no idea that he might be from Earth in the past. But they don't seem to have any idea. And they order Buck to follow them through the defense shield and to the city of New Chicago, which is apparently now the main city on Earth. It's the capital of Earth.
Nice. What I like is that, they have no idea who he is. They think he's a threat. So they're like, all right, let's bring him straight to the headquarters there.
Let's take him through the defense shield instead of interviewing him outside of the defense shield.
Yeah.
They take him straight to meet their leader. And Buck meets Dr. Elias, whose position is unclear in the world government, who tells Buck that he is now in the 25th century And everyone he knew was killed centuries ago in a nuclear holocaust.
Dude, that sucks.
It's amazing how little emotional response there is in this to being told that everyone you know and love died 500 years ago.
Yeah.
Like some of us might consider that to be bad news, whereas Buck just kind of makes a joke and...
Yeah, especially considering he was joking about it. He goes, oh, it seems like I was just here 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. No emotional response to being told your entire world is dead and everything and everyone you ever knew is gone. Your pets, your family, your girlfriends, whoever it is, they're gone. Parents, everyone is gone. And he's just like kind of like, oh, well, let me get a one-liner in. Cha-cheer. All right. Anyhow, the authorities on Earth find the tracking device on Buck's ship and immediately convict him of espionage and sentence him to death.
Seems fair.
Okay, maybe not exactly immediately, but it seems like it happens really quickly.
In Showtime, it was within 5 minutes of finding it.
They discover that he had, I think they checked his biology and found out that he really was from 500 years ago and then decided he was a spy. That's the way I remember it going down.
Well, yeah.
Because, when you're 500 years old, you still have a career as a spy. After sentencing him to death, Buck tells Colonel Deering that the Draconians are not actually on an unarmed, peaceful mission, but in fact are heavily armed and plan to attack Earth. I don't exactly know how he knows that. Did he see something when he was on their ship the first time?
It seems like somewhere in there he asks to see his shuttle and then he sees laser scorch marks on the hull and goes, hey, I haven't been in a fight before this, so they must have shot at me.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's
But you're right. That is not an indication that they have a massive armed force ready to go.
Somehow he knows that they do, and he convinces Colonel Deering to take him to fly out to the Draconian ship to find evidence to support his claims. Because that's what you do with death row, espionage, convicted spies, is you take them out on missions to spy on your new allies.
Yeah, she jumps right on board of that bandwagon really quick. She's like, heck yeah, let's go.
Which is funny considering she pretty much hates Buck at this point. Yeah. I don't know why. But anyhow, he convinces her to take him and some Starfighters out to the Draconian ship. So they lead a squadron out there. And during their visit, the Draconians deny having ever met Buck previously. And then the ship is mysteriously attacked by quote-unquote pirates, which are really Draconian fighters in disguise. So that was their big plan, was to keep their ships disguised as just interstellar space pirates so they could surprise the Earth with their force once they're let through the defense shield and take out the Earth.
Yeah.
For some reason that's never truly explained, I don't believe, the flight computers aboard the Starfighters that are supposed to do the dogfighting for them aren't really doing anything.
Oh no, they're horrible.
So they pretty much pick off the entire squadron except Buck and Wilma. And Buck decides to turn off his computer and uses his 20th century fighting skills.
Well, all those dogfights you used to have in the space shuttle.
In 1987. Yeah, of course. So he has his excellent dogfighting skills and manages to save Colonel Deering's life. And then for some reason, they just leave the Draconian ship. They never show him going back or talking about the pirates or landing again. Because they took off suddenly mid-mission to go take care of these pirates. And then they just leave. I don't know why.
Yep, they were supposed to be defending the Draconian ship, and then, like you said, they're just gone. They're like, all right, head back to Earth now.
Okay, we're heading back to Earth.
We're not going to tell them anything. We're not going to say, all right, you're good.
No, they're just like, bye. So once they return to Earth, and we're skipping a little bit here because there's that whole thing where Buck leaves New Chicago to go out into the wasteland of the Holocaust and gets attacked by mutants and all kinds of crazy things, other things that they would never let him do. But once they return to Earth from the Draconian ship, there's a party celebrating the treaty between the Draconians and Earth. And wow, is it a party. They're basically doing some kind of classical dancing that involves crystal balls.
Yes, it was awesome. I mean, they get ready for this dance thing. And to me, the opening scene of it is the costumes are so colorful and everything. It's almost like they're going to start a Bollywood dance number. And it has fun futuristic music, seems kind of like old school English formal dance, and seems to involve the metallic spheres you were talking about. And
There's a guy
crazy.
who's at some kind of panel with it's the kind of quote unquote futuristic thing you always saw in the 70s and 80s where it's a whole bunch of square lights all over a black panel.
He's basically looks like a DJ, but he's actually playing it, though.
So he's doing something with his hands. If you look closely enough, he's not even actually touching it, but
Shh, don't ruin the illusion.
And Buck comes up to him and tries to get him to play something more 20th century-ish. Is that a word? And the guy botches it once, and then he goes, no, like this, and he claps. And then suddenly the guy could just lay down funky bass rhythms from 1979 or an approximation thereof. And they start getting on the old 1979 dance train.
Oh, yeah. To me, it kind of sounded like they mixed their idea of futuristic with disco and jazz.
Kind of, yeah.
A little more boogie in it than that, but yeah.
It's strange, and it's one of those things where you keep expecting the big choreographed dance number to break out, or at least for everyone else to start dancing, but everyone stops and stares at Buck, and then Buck convinces the Draconian princess to dance with him in her sequin bikini, whatever she's wearing this. And everyone just kind of stands around and watches two people dance.
Seems fair. I mean, he's doing some weird tribal dance from hundreds of years ago, so.
This whole show has been terribly unrealistic and crazy. And then, where you're expecting it, where all shows go unrealistic and everyone just naturally knows the choreographed dance number together, they don't do it. They pull back and everyone just stands there like it more realistic than any of the other shows. And I'm like, why did you choose this moment? Because we're all about fun here on Super Sci-Fi Party, so it would have been more fun to have everyone start dancing in the ancient style, but apparently they were just going to stand there and do the creeper stare at Buck and Bikini Lady.
Oh, what's really interesting is Buck's kind of doing the guy shuffle, or just kind of back and forth, swaying more or less.
Exactly.
Then the princess, of course, she knows how to get down and dance from.
He's doing a wiggly worm kind of thing. I don't know. It's fun, but it could have been more fun. I wanted the big choreographed number.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least everybody to try the old school dancing just to see all the people in the crazy costumes jumping around. But anyway, something really weird happens at the party. Colonel Deering comes up and confesses having confusing feelings for Buck and offers to take him back to her place. This, I have to say, comes completely out of nowhere. There is no build up to this. Buck tries to flirt with her a little bit here and there, but she shuts him down hard. And she does not like him, and she yells at him.